Sometimes racism doesn't scream in your face. It just asks, who are you saving that seat for? And if you're not white, that question alone can turn a silent room into an accomplice. The community hall in South Oak Cliff smelled, as always, faintly of old sweat and floor wax. An oily sheen stretched across gray ceramic tiles, many of them cracked at the corners, dulled like worn teeth. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed and blinked, casting a cold, unending drizzle of white over the room, draining color not only from the walls but from the people sitting beneath them. Two black women walked in together, one old, one young. No one had to ask. They were blood. There was something in the way they moved that told you everything. Slow, unhurried, but never bowed. Proud in the way of people who had learned to stand in the rain without asking for an umbrella. May Ella Booker held her granddaughter's hand, Jasmine, as they passed the rows of old blue plastic chairs, their hinges groaning with every shift. May gave small nods to familiar faces, never too familiar. Jasmine, meanwhile, scanned the room. Her eyes were sharp, trained to see angles, blind spots, the soft corners where power liked to hide. Her dark blazer hugged her shoulders, her steps measured, controlled, as if she were mindful not to let her heels echo more than necessary. She carried no purse, just a phone and a slim folder tucked beneath her left arm. "Pick a spot, Auntie," Jasmine said, soft but decisive. "I need to take this call real quick. I'll be right beside you. We're not sitting apart." She unwound the deep purple scarf from her neck and handed it over. "Hold this for me? It's cold as hell in here." Then she turned, walking away with purpose, phone already at her ear, voice lowered. "Yes, I'm at the civic meeting now," she murmured. "But the Beaumont case can't wait. Pull in the inter-district legal team. We need it escalated." May nodded. She understood these calls. Jasmine wasn't the little girl who used to fuss when her belt pinched too tight. She was now a woman of law and public life. But also the same child May had taught to read, taught to argue properly, taught to look people square in the eye. May chose a seat in the third row, right on the aisle, her usual spot at church meetings and Eastside Clinic fundraisers. But this time, it wasn't hers alone. She laid Jasmine's scarf across the seat beside her, the one Jasmine had just vacated. A placeholder, a promise. The girl's not here now, but she's here. She lowered herself into the chair with a slowness that came not only from age, but from the weight of a long, hollow quiet she'd carried for decades. Her hands folded in her lap, fingers dry and knotted like roots, yet still carrying a rare softness. The kind that survives only in people who learned how to stay kind without going numb. Around her, the room filled in. People wandered in, clutching styrofoam cups of coffee or breakfast pastries wrapped in napkins. Old folks in cardigans, young ones in hoodies, even a few white-haired couples from the west side, the kind who never waved when May passed their porch in the morning. Her eyes swept across the room without revealing much. But inside, she was counting. Jasmine rarely took more than 10 minutes for a call like this. The Beaumont case was one of 3 she'd been juggling this week. It wasn't the first time she'd had to step out of a meeting to keep a black child from being locked away for a crime he didn't commit. May sat still, her back straight, hands resting in her lap. She didn't fidget, but her eyes were very much alive, and that perhaps was the one thing most people in that room didn't know how to read. A chair scraped nearby. Then another. 2 people stepped into the aisle, a white couple. The man was tall, dressed in a light khaki jacket, blonde hair combed back with gel and precision. The woman wore a beige turtleneck, gray slacks, and high boots that clacked with sharp rhythm on the tile floor. They paused when they saw May and the scarf beside her. "Morning, ma'am," the man said, his smile polite but thin. "Anyone sitting here? We're looking for 2 seats." May turned toward him. Her expression didn't shift. She didn't answer right away, like she was weighing whether it was even worth the breath. "This seat's taken," she said. Her voice was low but clear. "We don't see anyone," the woman cut in. "It's just you, isn't it?" She stepped out to take a call. "She'll be back," May replied. Firm, unbothered. Her hand rested lightly on the scarf, a quiet signal that needed no explaining. "You're saving seats?" The man chuckled, stepping closer. I thought the rules here were first come, first serve. Nobody's supposed to reserve chairs. Not at meetings like this. His voice rose just enough to pull attention. A few heads turned. A phone camera lifted discreetly. Someone near the back chuckled. May said nothing more. Her eyes held steady. She didn't look away. But her body grew still in that particular way, like a violin string stretched a fraction past what it can bear. Ms. May didn't respond further. She didn't have to. Her silence wasn't retreat. It was a kind of declaration, the way a statue declares something eternal without ever raising its voice. But the man standing above her didn't see that, or didn't care to. To him, she was an obstacle. A black, elderly woman occupying space he assumed would naturally belong to someone like him. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" he said again, voice louder now, the edge of courtesy peeling away. "You can't save seats. This is a public meeting." "I told you," Ms. May said calmly, without flinching. "My niece will be right back." The woman next to him folded her arms, exhaled hard through her nose like she was being subjected to a child's tantrum. "Well, fine," she huffed. "You sit, I'll stand." That line, casual, dismissive, thrown like a scarf on the floor, was what tipped the air. The man leaned in, fast, deliberate, reaching, not gently, toward the seat with the scarf on it. But before his hand could reach it, Miss May shifted her body, blocking him with all the weight her aging bones still possessed. Her hand came down over the scarf. Her gaze rose. There was no tremor in her eyes, no fear. But there was a finality there, something ancient and raw. The look of someone who had been robbed too many times and had finally decided, no more. "I said no," she said, each word crisp, slow, sharp like chipped obsidian. A chuckle bubbled up from a row behind. A smartphone screen lit up. Someone whispered, "Yo, record this. Might go viral." Murmurs bloomed like bacteria in warm air. A young man in a hoodie leaned to his friend. "Dang, she really gonna keep 2 seats to herself?" A woman further back offered, "I think I saw someone with her earlier." "Even so," another muttered, "the rules first come, first served." Nobody moved. Nobody intervened. But everyone watched. The man, emboldened now by the murmurs, reached again. This time not for the scarf, but for her wrist. His hand clamped over the weathered skin of her left wrist. The one with the thin scar from '73. He didn't pull hard, but he pulled, and she recoiled. The scarf slipped from her lap, dropped onto the floor. "You're being unreasonable," the man said now, more confident, more performative, as if trying to win an argument not with her, but with the room. Ms. May stood, not suddenly, but with all the slow gravity of someone who refused to be dragged up. She turned to face him. Her shoulders were square, her back straight, her feet planted. Her body was small, but in that moment, she was immovable. Her voice, when it came, was flint and steel. "I will not apologize, and I will not move." The woman beside the man stepped in. She didn't ask. She just reached, openly this time, toward the seat. And as her hand brushed Ms. May's shoulder, just a little too forcefully, it pushed the older woman sideways. Barely, but enough. She stumbled, landing in the next seat over. The scarf lay crumpled on the floor, one corner crushed beneath the heel of a beige boot. No one bent to pick it up. No one said a word. An invisible line had been crossed, but no alarm rang. Only silence. And screens. Ms. May looked up. Her chest lifted in a long, shallow breath. Not from pain, from solitude. The kind of solitude only people who've been shoved in plain sight and ignored know. She reached for her purse, slowly, pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved carefully, almost ritualistically. She dialed. Ring. Busy. Dialed again. Same. Again. No answer. The phone glowed in her palm, but no voice came. No hand reached out. Only the cold, metallic voice of disconnection. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." No one noticed her trembling, but they all noticed that she was making a scene. An old black woman, a disruption, an inconvenience. A handful of people kept watching. More held up their phones. A few smirked, a few winced, but nobody moved until the doors flung open and Jasmine Crockett walked in. The door creaked open, not loudly, but with a sound so precisely placed in the tension-choked air that it fractured the stillness like a hairline crack in glass. No one gasped. No one stood. But people straightened their backs, dimmed their screens, adjusted their breathing. Jasmine Crockett stood in the doorway. She didn't walk in right away. She froze, half inside, half out, as if something in her chest had registered a rupture her eyes hadn't fully seen yet. Her phone was still in her hand, lit up, thumb hovering over the redial button. But her eyes dropped and found what they weren't prepared to. The purple scarf, her aunt, slumped slightly, back curved not from age but from something heavier. The phone in her hand, not raised to her ear, but gripped like a lifeline that had stopped answering. There were no tears on her face, but there was a crack in her stillness. The kind of crack people only recognize when it's already too late to pretend they didn't cause it. "Auntie?" Jasmine's voice cut through the room like a tuning fork. There was no response. A few people turned their heads. A few lowered their eyes. Phones went dark. The weight of silence shifted, now burdened with guilt. Jasmine walked forward. She didn't rush, but each step carried the kind of force that made the floor remember it had structure. She bent, picked up the scarf. Her hand trembled, only slightly, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. Controlled fury in someone trained never to lose control. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, touching her aunt's shoulder. The older woman nodded once, barely, but that one motion told Jasmine everything. She stood slowly, and then she turned. The white couple didn't move. The man looked irritated. The woman looked like she was trying to decide whether to play confused or offended. "You touched her?" Jasmine asked, her voice low, even, deadly. "We didn't know," the man snapped almost immediately. "If you were here, things would have been different, but you weren't." "We didn't mean to offend anyone," the woman added, trying to weave together diplomacy from frayed nerves. "Maybe." She didn't understand how things work here. "No one asked you what you meant," Jasmine said, soft, precise, and final. A chill traveled through the rows like the building itself had inhaled and now refused to breathe out. "There are cameras here. There are witnesses. And there's a woman, an elder, who was grabbed by the wrist, pushed out of her seat, and told she was being unreasonable while doing nothing but keeping a promise to her niece." She pulled a small leather case from her jacket and without flourish held up her congressional ID, embossed with the golden seal of the United States House of Representatives. "I'm Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. I represent this district." She paused, not for effect, but for gravity. "And the woman you disrespected, violated, is my aunt. We arrived together. I stepped out to take a call regarding a wrongful arrest case in Beaumont. And when I returned, I found this." The room shifted. Whispers without volume. Screens turned black. Chairs creaked, but no one dared move. Jasmine's voice was steady, crisp, measured. "If you don't apologize, clearly, publicly, sincerely, I will have the security footage pulled. I'll release it to the press. I will personally file a complaint with the city's Human Rights Commission, and I will invoke your names in a public hearing on equal access to community spaces." She stepped forward, not to intimidate, but to underline the fact that no one else in this room had the floor now. "You have 30 seconds, she said quietly, "not to save your reputation, but to reclaim your humanity." And then she said nothing. The silence was ice water. It ran through every vein in the room. No one could look away, and still, no one spoke. 10 seconds passed. The man folded his arms, jaw locked, looking around for an ally. There were none. Faces turned away, or down, or toward Jasmine, because she was now the only person whose face could be looked at without shame. 20 seconds. The woman's lips pressed into a line. Her fingers twisted in front of her waist. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again, failed. She turned to the man beside her. "Say something," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. He shook his head, eyes flaring, not with regret, but humiliation at being dragged from the pedestal he thought was his birthright. 29 seconds. The woman started. Her voice cracked, but she forced it through. We're sorry. We behaved improperly. Improperly, Jasmine repeated, one eyebrow lifting. Or abusively, or with entitlement, or with the kind of passive violence that people wrap in politeness so they don't have to feel the impact. The man turned his head away, and finally, barely audible, his lips moved. Sorry. Ragged, begrudging. But it came out. The room exhaled, not in relief, but like a body pulling itself out of quicksand. Jasmine crouched, retrieved the scarf, brushed the dust from its edge, and laid it across the empty seat. Then she turned to her aunt. You sit here, she said, her voice gentler now. This is your seat. No one touches it again. She sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder, and no one, not even the boldest, most bitter in the room, dared question why. After the couple had backed away from the seats, silent, out of options, out of pride, the air in the community hall didn't quite settle. It thinned, stretched, then stilled into something weightier than silence, collective awareness. The moderator, voice uncertain, invited Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to give her opening remarks. She was meant to speak on federal funding, local infrastructure, the usual civic bullet points. But no one in the room wanted a policy update now. They were waiting for something honest, and they knew she had it. Jasmine didn't walk to the podium. She stepped into the center aisle instead. She didn't ask for a mic. She didn't raise her voice. Before we begin, she said, I'd like to speak to what just happened in this room. Not to assign blame, but because we cannot pretend it didn't happen. The room held its breath. A pen stopped scribbling. A child put away a phone. We live in a country, she said, where sometimes an empty chair isn't empty, where a scarf, a simple signal that someone is coming back, still isn't enough to protect a woman from being shoved aside. She turned toward her aunt, still seated, still quiet, still enduring in that impossible way only Black women know. I was raised by a woman who taught me that decency doesn't need an audience, that dignity should never depend on whether people know your name. But today, right here in this room, she was disrespected. And if I hadn't walked in at the moment I did, maybe no one would have stood up. No one lowered their eyes now. They looked at Jasmine the way people look at fire, afraid but warmed by it. What happened, she continued, was never about a seat. It was about what we hold inside when no one's looking. It was about how we treat the quieter person, the smaller person, the one who doesn't look like us. It was a lesson about truth, how those most easily overlooked are often the ones who cleared the path for us to sit in the first place. Someone in the back whispered, Amen. Another nodded. I didn't come here today to be angry, Jasmine said. I came to remind us. If community doesn't mean protecting each other, then all our policies are hollow. She paused, looked at her watch. I won't be able to stay long. The Beaumont case has escalated. There's a young man being detained without cause. I'm headed straight to the police station from here. She glanced at the seat beside her. It was empty, and in the stillness of that space, 2 seats were quietly offered. To a white woman who had just walked in, visibly pregnant, coat zipped tight over her belly, hand clutching a small boy's wrist. She looked exhausted, out of place, but grateful. May Booker, Jasmine's aunt, stood. She didn't return to her seat. She walked to the back of the room and stood against the wall, just as she had so many times before, back when there were no seats for people like her, and the meeting, like a boat that had just ridden a hidden wave, drifted gently back to its original agenda. Rising grocery prices, shrinking local budgets, but no one sat the same way they had before. No one left untouched, and somewhere someone clipped a section of Jasmine's speech from a live stream and shared it online. The line echoed across timelines, group chats, headlines. The seat was never empty. You just didn't see who it was waiting for.